Monsieur Caron, seconded by Ms. Brosseau, move that the honourable member for Elmwood-Transcona be now heard. Is it the pleasure of the House to adopt the motion? Yes? Okay. All those in favour of the motion will please say yea. All those opposed will please say nay. À mon avis, les oui ne l'ont pas.
In my opinion, the yeas have it.
Il n'y a pas personne qui s'est levé, par exemple? Okay. I declare the motion carried. Resuming debate, the honourable member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my colleagues in the House for the opportunity to close debate. I wish we were closing debate at this time, but considering that the time is what it is and it was allocated so severely in the motion that set the context for this debate, it's an honour to be able to close it. I want to close it by addressing what I think was really one of the principal arguments that we've heard by the government throughout the debate today, which was that they really had no choice and that this is a crisis beyond their control, Madam Speaker, because I think what we've heard consistently throughout debate today is that that's not the case. That postal workers have been out on a rotating strike, which has seen the mail get delivered. In fact, in some parts of the country, there's only been a disturbance for 1 day out of the many, many days, out of the 5 weeks that Canada Post has been on strike. And I'm sorry, Madam Speaker, but that does not a crisis make. And I know that there are small businesses out there and Canadians out there that want to receive their packages. And the fact is, postal workers want to deliver those packages. But they don't want a circumstance where 1 in 4 of them can expect to get hurt doing it and not be able to go home and enjoy their Christmas with their family because they got injured working in unreasonable conditions that have persisted at Canada Post for a very long time now, Madam Speaker. And that's what this government is asking them to do, to go out into a workplace with the highest rate of injury in the federal sector. And we just think that that's completely unacceptable, and we don't believe we had to be here. We've heard all day from the Minister of Labour defending this, Madam Speaker, and I think that's a shame, because the person who should have been on feed all day was the Minister responsible for Canada Post, who has failed to put in management that's willing to address the real workplace issues that are taking place, that are causing those workers to be hurt, that has failed to address the mandatory overtime that's disrupting the family life of workers at Canada Post and also contributing to that injury rate, and who has failed to put management in place at Canada Post that's going to address the real pay equity issues that exist between the rural and suburban carriers and the urban carriers. And if we had real leadership from the minister who's actually responsible for that corporation, we could have avoided this situation. And so to hear the Minister of Labour get up and talk about a crisis as if the government has no control over it, I think is a little rich, and they're frankly asking too much of postal workers who were legislated back to work under bad terms and conditions in 2011 and been doing their utmost to make sure that people continue to receive their mail reliably at a great cost to either themselves or their work colleagues. And this was the opportunity to do something about that. And we've heard a plethora of excuses from the Liberal government about as to why we should accept that, even though they are, with back-to-work legislation, undermining the collective bargaining rights of Canadians, we should accept it. Well, because they got rid of Bill C-377. One of the major objections to which was the fact that it would reveal the contents of union strike funds to employers. The idea of getting rid of that legislation was to support unions being able to go out on strike and not being undermined by their employer. But if the government is going to repeal that legislation with one hand and then legislate them back to work and artificially end the strike on the other hand, it amounts to a similar thing. It also undermines the right to collective bargaining. And the fact of the matter, and then we've heard about hard decisions, Madam Speaker, and the fact of the matter is, it's true, you do have to make hard decisions in government. But what isn't true is that every time you have to make a hard decision, workers have to get the short end of the stick. So when Air Canada came to the government early in its mandate and said, we want to get rid of the provisions that require us to have our maintenance work done in Canada because we want to offshore that work, The Liberals jumped to the pump. They got it done. They made sure that the corporate execs at Air Canada got what they wanted. When big multinational companies came to the Liberals throughout TPP negotiations, and they had an opportunity to substantially renegotiate the TPP deal, they decided to continue on with the temporary worker provisions that, and again, we heard from the Liberals, oh, we're fixing the TFW program, we're making it better. Then they smuggled the provisions of that program, and worse, into Chapter 12 of the TPP. They could have done something for workers then. But no, they said it's time for a hard decision, so we're going to side with the big multinationals. They did it again with their friends on Bay Street on the CEO stock option loophole, when they got lobbied time and time again, dozens of times, to break an election commitment. And when that hard decision came up, what did they do? They sided with the folks on Bay Street and broke their election commitment. And workers are going to pay the price for that, and are paying the price for that, because then they're told, I'm sorry, we don't have the money to do what we want to do. When it came to Netflix paying their fair share, Netflix came and lobbied, and it was time for a hard decision. What decision did they make? They sided again with the large multinationals so that they didn't have to pay their share. On the carbon tax, when the biggest polluters and the biggest moneymakers came to them and said, we want a break on the carbon tax unlike everybody else, the Liberals granted it to them. And that's the theme, Madam Speaker. Whenever there's a hard decision, workers lose with this government. That's the problem.